The night my boss saw me at the bar was the night everything I believed about power, loneliness, and second chances cracked open like glass under pressure. Because I had never planned to be there, never planned to be seen, and certainly never planned to feel my entire future tilt because of one quiet, dangerous moment that felt like fate reaching across a crowded room. I was sitting alone in a dim bar in downtown Chicago, Illinois, nursing a drink I barely tasted, wearing the weight of a week that had hollowed me out. My name is Nathan Walker, and I was just another mid-level analyst at a real estate firm that rewarded silence and punished vulnerability. That week, the firm had downsized, projects were collapsing, and my father's medical bills were stacking up faster than my paychecks. I went to the bar not to drink, but to disappear for an hour, to sit in a place where no one expected competence or confidence from me. The lights were low, the music was slow, and every person there looked like they were running from something. I fit right in. Then I felt it, that subtle shift in the air when someone important walks into a room. I looked up without knowing why, and that was when I saw her, Margaret Collins, my boss, the woman who controlled my schedule, my evaluations, and indirectly my future, stood just inside the door. She was known in the office as untouchable, composed, always 10 steps ahead. Seeing her outside the boardroom felt like spotting a judge without a robe. She wasn't surrounded by colleagues or clients. She was alone. That aloneness clung to her more loudly than any confidence she wore at work. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Because sometimes the smallest gestures of support can change more lives than we realize. Margaret didn't notice me at first. She ordered a drink, leaned against the bar, and stared into the mirror behind it like she was searching for someone she'd lost years ago. I should have left. Every sensible instinct told me to pay my tab and vanish before complications found me. But exhaustion makes people reckless. I stayed, and eventually, she turned, her eyes sweeping the room until they landed on me. Recognition crossed her face, followed by something softer, something human. She walked over, and in that moment the walls between boss and employee, power and vulnerability, seemed paper thin. The night unfolded quietly, without spectacle. No one else in the bar knew that two people from opposite ends of a professional hierarchy were sitting a few feet apart, bound by exhaustion and unspoken truths. Margaret looked different there, not weaker, just real. I noticed the faint lines near her eyes that only appear when someone smiles genuinely or cries alone. I noticed how carefully she held her glass, like she was afraid of spilling more than just a drink. What I didn't know then was that Margaret had lost her husband 2 years earlier to a sudden illness, and grief had hardened her into efficiency. The firm became her refuge, her armor, her excuse not to feel. That night, the armor cracked. She had come to the bar after signing papers that finalized the sale of the house she once shared with a man who had promised forever. She wasn't looking for trouble or romance. She was looking for silence that didn't echo. Being seen by her outside the office made me feel exposed in a way I hadn't expected. I was used to being invisible, the guy who delivered reports early and left late. But that night, she saw me not as an employee, but as a person who looked just as lost as she felt. The realization scared me. It also warmed me in a way I hadn't felt in years. As the hours passed, something shifted inside me, not attraction in the shallow sense, but recognition. Two people standing on opposite sides of success, both quietly failing at being okay. I realized how lonely ambition can be, how isolating leadership becomes when you have no one to go home to. Margaret wasn't the intimidating executive anymore. She was a woman carrying grief in a tailored jacket, sitting in a bar because home felt too empty. Life doesn't announce when it's about to change. It slips in sideways, disguised as coincidence. That night didn't end with fireworks or scandal. It ended with a shared understanding that neither of us would talk about what happened, at least not yet. But understanding can be heavier than words. The days that followed were tense. At work, Margaret returned to her composed self, but something in her eyes softened when they passed over me in meetings. I found myself working harder, not for approval, but out of a strange loyalty born that night. Rumors began circling the office about restructuring, about layoffs, about promotions that never came. I feared being cut loose more than ever, because now my life felt precariously balanced between hope and responsibility. One evening, weeks later, Margaret called me into her office after everyone else had left. The city lights outside reflected off the glass walls, making the room feel suspended above the world. She looked tired, but peaceful, like someone who had finally accepted something difficult. She had decided to step down from her role and take a leave, admitting that she had been running from grief instead of healing. The firm would survive. She needed to do something braver. Her honesty changed me. Watching someone so powerful choose vulnerability over control rewired something inside my chest. I realized that kindness isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's the courage to stop pretending. As she prepared to leave, she recommended me for a position I never would have applied for myself. She said I had steadiness, the kind that holds when things fall apart. When the promotion came through weeks later, I understood that the real gift she gave me wasn't the job. It was belief. Before the ending, I want to ask you something special. Please comment below and share what this story made you feel, because your words matter more than you think. Months passed. Margaret moved to a small coastal town in Oregon to start over. We didn't speak often, but when we did, it was honest and simple. No titles, no expectations. Just two people who had seen each other at their weakest and chosen kindness anyway. Looking back, that night at the bar wasn't about temptation or escape. It was about two broken lives brushing against each other and choosing not to look away. It taught me that power doesn't come from control but from compassion, and that sometimes being taken home means being brought back to yourself. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness can exist in the most unexpected places, please like, comment, and share this video. Subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can find the people who need them. Because somewhere out there, someone is sitting alone in a bar, waiting to be seen, and stories like this remind us that hope still walks through the door.